To understand how crazy Kawhi's career became, you have to remember what people thought he was gonna be when he entered the NBA. Because Kawhi Leonard was not LeBron James. Kawhi Leonard was not Zion. Kawhi Leonard was not Victor Wembanyama. Nobody was following Kawhi Leonard around when he was 16 years old, expecting him to become the face of basketball. San Diego State, Kawhi was known primarily for his physical tools, the huge hands, long arms, rebounding, defense, and an engine. But there were serious questions about his offensive game. Could he shoot well enough? Could he create his own offense? Could he become anything more than an elite role player? In the 2011 NBA draft, Kawhi Leonard fell to the 15th pick, and technically Indiana selected him. But San Antonio had identified something. The Spurs traded George Hill to acquire Kawhi, and looking back now, it became one of the greatest trades of that era, because Kawhi landed in almost the perfect environment. I mean, Tim Duncan, Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili, Greg Popovich, one of the most stable organizations in professional sports. And initially, nobody needed Kawhi to become Michael Jordan. His job was much simpler. Defend, rebound, run the floor, hit open shots, and just learn. But Kawhi didn't stay in that role for very long, because every year something changed. His jumper improved, his handle improved, his footwork improved, his confidence improved. And eventually San Antonio realized, we didn't draft a role player, we may have accidentally found our next superstar. By 2013, Kawhi was already playing on basketball's biggest stage. The Spurs reached the NBA Finals against LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh, and the Miami Heat. Kawhi was only 21, and he was already being asked to defend LeBron James. San Antonio came painfully close to winning that championship. But 1 year later, they came back, and this time, they destroyed Miami. The Spurs played some of the most beautiful team basketball you'll ever see. The ball movement, the spacing, the passing, the cutting, everyone touching the basketball. But standing in the middle of it was a 22-year-old Kawhi Leonard, and Kawhi won Finals MVP. Think about that. 21 years old, guarding arguably the greatest player alive, NBA champion, Finals MVP, and Kawhi still wasn't anywhere close to the player he would eventually become. That's where the story gets interesting, because most young Finals MVPs would already be close to their ceiling, but Kawhi wasn't. His offense was still developing. Over the next few seasons, Kawhi Leonard transformed, and I don't think people appreciate how unusual that transformation was. He went from being viewed as a defensive specialist to becoming one of the most complete players in basketball. The defense was already terrifying. Kawhi wasn't just good defensively. There were stretches where teams basically stopped challenging him. Passing lanes disappeared. Ball handlers couldn't expose the basketball. And those giant hands allowed Kawhi to rip the ball away from players like somebody stealing lunch money. In 2015, he won Defensive Player of the Year. Then he won it again the next year. But while everyone was watching his defense, his offense was evolving. The three-point shot became reliable. The mid-range became lethal. His strength allowed him to bully smaller defenders. His footwork became almost surgical. And eventually, Kawhi became one of those players where you couldn't identify a comfortable way to guard him. By the 2016-17 season, Kawhi was averaging more than 25 points per game while remaining one of the league's premier defenders. He finished third in MVP voting. And suddenly, San Antonio had done the impossible. Tim Duncan was gone. The dynasty should have been over. Instead, they had another franchise player. Kawhi was 25 years old. He was entering his prime. And the Spurs won 61 games. Everything was lining up until one afternoon in Oakland changed the direction of his career. 2017 Western Conference Finals, San Antonio versus Golden State. And remember what Golden State was at this point. Stephen Curry, Kevin Durant, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, one of the most talented teams ever assembled. Almost nobody believed San Antonio could actually beat them. But then game one happened. San Antonio went into Oracle Arena and punched Golden State in the mouth. The Spurs built a massive lead. Kawhi was dominated. And then he came down on Zaza Pachulia's foot. Kawhi injured his ankle and he left the game. Golden State came back, San Antonio lost Game 1. Kawhi did not return for the series. The Golden State went on to sweep the Spurs. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you San Antonio definitely beats the KD Warriors if Kawhi stays healthy. That's impossible to know. But what we do know is that before Kawhi left that game, San Antonio looked capable of making this series interesting. And more importantly, Kawhi Leonard's career was never quite the same afterward. Not because of the ankle alone, but because the following season introduced something much bigger: his quadriceps. The 2017-18 season is where the Kawhi Leonard story gets complicated. He played only 9 games. There was disagreement and uncertainty surrounding his quadriceps injury. The Spurs had one perspective, Kawhi's camp had another, and the relationship deteriorated. This is important because San Antonio had spent years developing Kawhi. They helped transform him from a defensive prospect into an MVP candidate. He looked like Tim Duncan's successor. Then suddenly, the relationship collapsed. Kawhi wanted out. And this was the first major turning point in his legacy. Because Kawhi wasn't simply leaving a team, he was leaving arguably the most stable basketball environment you could imagine. San Antonio eventually traded him to Toronto. At the time, some people wondered whether Toronto had just traded for damaged goods, but instead, Toronto unleashed a monster. If you want to understand why I believe Kawhi Leonard had top 10 potential, watch the 2019 playoffs, because this wasn't someone riding a stacked roster to a championship. Kawhi was unbelievable. Philly learned that firsthand. Game 7, tie game. It's the final seconds. Kawhi gets the ball. He moves towards the corner, pulls up over Joel Embiid. The ball hits the rim, it bounces again, bounces one more time, and then drops. One of the most iconic shots in NBA history. But Toronto still had Milwaukee waiting. Giannis Antetokounmpo. The Bucks took a 2-0 series lead, and then Toronto went on to win 4 straight. And Kawhi's two-way impact was enormous. Then came Golden State, the defending champions. Yes, Golden State dealt with major injuries during those finals. That's part of the historical context. But Kawhi still did what he had to do to bring Toronto home. And Kawhi Leonard won the finals MVP. Again. But now we stop here. It's June 2019. Kawhi Leonard is 27 years old. He already has 2 championships, 2 finals MVPs, 2 Defensive Player of the Year awards, multiple All-NBA selections, multiple All-Defensive selection, an MVP caliber peak, and one of the most memorable playoff runs of his generation. 27 years old. That's why I don't think saying top 10 potential is crazy. Imagine another 7 or 8 seasons of that. Imagine 20,000 plus points. Imagine 10 or more All-NBA selections. Imagine another championship, maybe another finals MVP. Imagine several more seasons playing 70 plus games a year and competing for MVP. We're suddenly describing an entirely different historical resume. And Kawhi had an opportunity to chase exactly that. Instead, he made the decision that defines the second half of his career: Los Angeles.